Hi, my name is Shai. Welcome to my YouTube channel where I discuss various topics. Today, I specifically wanted to talk about money in the workplace. For someone who's similar to me, that you had a profession, it was 9 to 5, you've advanced, you worked, straight out of school with it, and you've progressed. This is more giving you tips around things like negotiating your pay, how to ask for your worth in the workplace, especially as a young upcoming professional, because I know I had that perception that, of course, the executives and the C suites all get to negotiate and have these discussions. But if you are well below that, do you really have a say in what you get paid? Do you really get to ask for more or question any offer you're made? Is that appropriate? And I even think I remember being very, probably like a year or two into my profession, thinking, man, people who do that are so ungrateful. They're so ungrateful. You should just be happy to have a job. And that's a fallacy, guys. It's a fallacy. And it is something that, unfortunately, it's a mindset. I don't know where we're taught it. I don't know if I want to blame corporations or people ahead of us who have passed on that mindset to us. But this idea that you should be thankful that a company wants you is not accurate, especially, this is especially for people who you are sought out or you come there contributing significantly to that corporation. Human capital are one of those assets that companies have that they even acknowledge it internally. It's their most valuable asset. I I can't think of any company I went to where they didn't have a head of HR or some sort of human capital leadership, because you can't run a company without people. You just you can't run a successful multinational, multi-billion dollar company without people. And they will, buy the latest tools, buy the latest software. So why not get the people with the skills and pay them their equitable pay? The only reason they won't do that is if the people don't know what is equitable. If they don't know how to ask for it. In terms of asking for what you're worth, what is worth, I would say the first lesson I learned is you never take the first offer. I mean, I think that's just like probably a well-known lesson, but it took me a while to pick up on it. You never take the first offer without a conversation or without a counter, because again, companies have a budget. They have a range. It's no different than your personal budget. If you could spend less and keep your money, wouldn't you? Right? If you knew, say, for example, you had a sinking fund for a purchase and your sinking fund was 500, but you found out that you could pay 200, would you just willy-nilly give up the 500? No, you would not. So it's no different in how they handle pay. They have a range, they have a pay band, they often have a budget for a head, and highly unlikely, unless they're just special circumstances, which I have hired and I have terminated people, so I've seen both sides of the fence and I have been hired. I know sometimes we may come across a talent, right? Like you're trying to poach a talent, the talent earns X, very competitive, comes with experience that's extremely specialized and unique, and you're trying to attract the talent. In that case, you might, it's no different than like bidding for a house. You might put your best offer on the table on the outset, but even then, you don't put every single thing on the table, right? You hold back some things because oftentimes a smart, talented person who knows their worth will come back with a counter, will come back with a conversation. So that's my first advice, is like that first offer, and go, yeah, thank you, run, pause, sleep on it. That's one thing I had to learn the hard way. Even if I'm so excited, I can't believe it's happening, it's the best job ever, I still sleep on it. Sleep on it. And oftentimes, leading up to an offer, there's a window, right? From when you do an interview, your first, second, third, 15 interview, however many interviews you have to do for this job these days, God knows how many interviews. You could tell if the offer is coming. I think in that window is really where you double down on your research. Start to know what are your non-negotiables, not just salary-wise, because we often focus on that. What are you going to earn? What is the base? Yes, you need that for day-to-day living, but knowing now what you know, having talked to people who are working there, of maybe what work-life balance looks like, Oftentimes companies will use language like fast-paced work environment. That typically means you're going to work. That typically means work-life balance probably is non-existent, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you do that because that's the propeller to the next thing in your career. But if you're choosing that kind of a role and you've had these discussions, then you should immediately know not just salary. You want to see ways you can build in things there for you to survive. For example, what is their PTO policy like? Even though, yeah, you might not be able to take a lot of time off, but at least you want to have the option to. And you want to have a robust enough buffer that, I don't know, if you're about to crash and burn, you could just go away for a few weeks, right? And not be counting money in your account. You want to look at, is this a publicly traded company? Do they have equity? Which equity is a whole conversation we can have on its own, about the vested nature of it. Are you getting shares versus options? What happens when there's a change of a control? Do you lose all your equity? Does it get accelerated vested? And if you don't know what vesting is, that's, again, we can have a whole conversation about equity. But just because someone gives you shares doesn't mean, oh, it's done. It's a done deal. That's it. Wow, I'm just thankful to have these shares. Ask questions, because a lot of these companies will offer you a share-based compensation, but there is a lot of conditions to it that requires you to be there for so long or do certain things for so long before you could have access to it. And one might say, well, that's only fair because, why are you entitled to it? I tell you this, I have also been part of conversations about executive conversations. Most executives have clauses that exempts them from that bullshit. Plainly stated, like they would take the share. Yeah, they vest whatever. But if anything changes, for example, if they resign, if a new company acquires the company, if there's restructuring and they get laid off, there is always clauses their lawyers put in those things that say at that point they get to walk away with their stuff. They get to walk away with, if not all of it, substantially all of it. So I'm not saying you will get the same treatment as an executive, but just remember that in every rule you are told for compensation when it comes to company, there's always exceptions and there's always room to negotiate something in anyone's offer. I don't care if it's one additional day of PTO, if it's an additional couple thousands, if it's that you get some flexibility in your schedule, perhaps you get a half Friday every other day. Think through what you need for that role. Research that industry, research that company. Thank God for so many websites online for you to hear actual employees giving you reviews about the companies. Research that company and then be in a position when the offer comes, because you usually know when it's coming, that you can have an intelligent conversation with HR. And don't make it emotional. These people don't know you. Like, it's a budget, it's a role, it is business. Don't be like, oh, because I spoke to Dustin so in an interview, now they're making me an offer. That's not usually the case. It is business. It's typically business. Sometimes it can be personal, but when you're on the outset coming into a company, people don't know you. Maybe they have their own preconceived notions about you, and I won't lie that there are discriminatory practices in place. Of course, those things exist. But for you to keep a level head and get what you want, you kind of have to take the whole it is me versus them mindset out of it. Just you're negotiating the best way for you to perform for them. Yeah, you're negotiating terms and conditions that makes it so when you walk in the door, you can give them your best. And that's usually what I lead with in conversations. Like, this is not about, oh, I'm trying to get rich off this role, I'm trying to get this, that. No, these are the things, right, that makes it so when I walk in the door, I am performing in my mask. I'm not thinking about my bank account. I'm not thinking about how I have no time off. I'm not thinking about the benefits I don't have, so I can't afford to be sick, or I can't. If all those bases are covered, I can walk in here, give you 10, 11 hours, and you have the best of me, right? Because I know I'm taken care of. And I know when I leave here, my personal life is covered. So it's an it's a fair transaction. But if an employer is unwilling to even entertain a conversation with you about those things, I'd say, really consider if that's somewhere you want to be. The last thing I'll say about workplace and money is everything I've said is prefaced on if you do your job. If you do a good job, I'm sorry. You can't walk in negotiating, demanding, asking, doing all these things if you're not bringing the talent to the table. It's just not going to work, right? Because for an employer to be willing to give you that much, give you the autonomy, give you the flexibility, give you the compensation, give you the perks, give you anything that you might desire in a role, what really helps that conversation go far is, like I said, it's an equitable transaction where you are going to come to the job, you have proven track of success, and you're going to come to the job with that same level of success and perform. That's what they're investing in. So it's no different than like if you went to go buy a house, for example, and someone was like, "Oh, this house is worth 500,000," and you walk in the door and everything's decrepit and breaking down and nothing's functioning. And they just standing 10 toes down, like, this is what the house is worth, this is what you would pay. The house is going to sit on the market forever. No one's going to buy that. It's the same way you have to look at yourself going into these companies. What are you what are you asking for, and are you bringing that to the table? Have you shown that you can do that? Have you articulated that in your interviews, in your discussions? Those are my, again, high level workplace money advice and things that I have learned. I'll say again, oftentimes the right companies will, at a minimum, entertain a conversation with you. Don't take things personal. Don't try not to take things personal. It doesn't go far. It doesn't bode well. You still got to work there, And make sure your talent matches your ask. Make sure what you're asking them to do, you are willing to give them in terms of, your skills and your services. And yeah, that will be it for this version of the money series. Next one, we'll see what that brings. Y'all have a nice day. Bye.